Welcome to the Self-Service Generation podcast, where we explore how technology impacts, improves, and enables the customer experience that we all expect from businesses and organizations that we engage or work with. Don't worry, we only keep it to 20 minutes, so hopefully you'll find it interesting. Thanks very much.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Self-Service Generation podcast with me, Gavin.
And me, Steve.
Today, we're going to talk about getting yourself chat ready. We're going to talk about what a conversational bot is and how you can make sure you get your business ready and set up for making sure you're going to be really driving success utilizing this technology. What I think would be a really useful start to this is, like, Steve, just talk us through what we mean when we say conversational bot.
Right, well, a conversational bot is going to answer questions on your behalf or take people down a self-service journey that kind of automates a whole conversation without a human involved or working alongside a human. Very important these days with the fact that you have different channels and different ways of interacting with the bots, but the core logic behind them is the same. So if you're a chatbot on a website, for instance, so if you know the little box that pops up and that's an automated conversation, then that's a chatbot. But of course, you sometimes see those and they're live agents, and that's a human behind them. But we're talking about a bot in the background. So that can be, WhatsApp, it can be Facebook Messenger, it can be any of those channels, and also voice, of course. So you can phone a service and get an automated response to that stuff as well, but automating that conversation and that flow. So that's very quickly.
A really useful, really good overview. Could you
just
to make it to add it to kind of add that extra context? Could you give us an example of maybe one of your clients that you're working with at the moment, or have worked with, and how they've kind of used conversational bots to kind of improve the way their business works? Just kind of gives that context to people who are calling as to the way this could potentially impact and help them as a business.
Well, if you look at so we work with a bunch of charities, for instance, and they the deal with the charities that we deal with. So we deal with Age UK partners. We also deal with a contact families with disabled children charity. And the big deal that they have is they have a massive influx of questions. How do I do this? How do I help heat my home? How do I get help with dementia care? How do I access benefits? How do I do this funding scheme? How do I help donate to your organization? All those different questions that come in from all sorts of angles. And we build the chatbot then to answer those questions, and then escalate those queries to a flow that automates that whole process when that's relevant. So if somebody wants to do a donation journey, we'll take them down the donation journey, and they haven't then spoken to anybody. The whole process is automated, and it's a self-service thing at any time of night. They could be doing it at 9 o'clock at night, which a charity can't staff. It's an impossible task, but that doesn't matter because it's 24/7. And then we can hand over to humans, we can do all that type of stuff. So there's a collaborative process as well. But the typical thing is that we answer questions, we help people start a process or do a full process. We integrated into maybe somebody's Salesforce or something like that, where we do the whole process and kick the whole thing off. And that then means that you are automating the whole of that conversation. And this is what we're talking about now, is conversational automation. Yeah. Using the term AI in a loose fashion. But of course, ChatGPT is the bit that's raised its head now. And why people are suddenly kind of aware of how powerful a chatbot or a voice bot can be is because the GPT technology has just gone, this is now out, it's now working. The experiment is over. We now have a working model that works very well. And again, just to get everybody on what GPT is. So Chat GPT is the actual application that people have been using and chatting to and going, oh, look, it's answered loads of questions and give me a little article. It's written something, it's done this, it's done that. So that's the application, but GPT is the model behind it. So what that actually understands is context. So it goes out, grabs information, and it gets content back and summarizes that, gives you an answer. And currently, the GPT one is looking at the internet. So the internet has got varied opinions and varied informational levels of accuracy.
Yeah.
So of course there's been a lot of hype around the fact that it wasn't accurate, it didn't do it right, it didn't do this, that, and the other. But now the using the GPT model that's been experimented on and it's now commercially available, we're now doing very specific information responses based on a charity or organization or business's information. So the answers are then accurate because it's come back from the right source, your source. And that's the difference now. And it's the bit that people have to consider. And that's kind of why we're talking about how do we get ready for that then? So what do you do?
Exactly.
Where do you start? Because that suddenly becomes oh, that sounds useful. So we can actually do something really real with that.
So the big difference here is obviously with ChatGPT, you're looking at a mass amount of information which may or may not be relevant directly to a business, but it gives you can ask it pretty much anything and it will give you an answer. But what you're doing is going, actually, let's work specifically with an organization to train the model on their data. So if a customer has an inquiry in regards to how do I donate or how do I get benefits, it's able to give a response directly around that organization's structure, that organization's data that is tailored towards the organization. The main beauty of that is the fact that from a customer's point of view, I can get my basic answers answered really quickly, really easily, 24/7. And from an organizational point of view, as a business, I can service customers on a basic level 24/7, but also it reduces the load on me in the business, so I can really help those customers who have more challenging questions, who potentially need help in certain areas.
That's right. It's the collaborative process you've got to consider. So the first point of call on this is that why are you doing this? So what's your strategy behind it? And like I said, the charity we're talking about, so Age UK Partners, for instance, they will have an influx of loads of questions coming into them from all sorts of different subjects, anything that is to do with general life, really, from health issues to finance issues to anything and everything that falls in between. So that's a wide ranging bit of information. And as charities, as much as everybody at the moment, this and cost of living crisis that we're in, stuff is expensive, so they can't man these things 24/7. They usually got hours, something like 11 till 3. That's not a lot of time to help people. So outside of that, what do you do? And rather than having a load of influx of emails and to and fro of questions and all that type of stuff, the answers are there and available immediately, and or a process can be started immediately. So if somebody wants to engage with the service, so become a service user, we can automate that process as well, so that the information is accurate, it's done, somebody's happy that they've engaged properly, and you're on your road. So it's wondering how that bit services, getting that 80-20 rule right, so that you've got 80% of the stuff that's really slowing the organization down is dealt with, and then the 20% can be the humans, it can be the team can spend proper time on those people,
because that's the thing, isn't it? You can focus the chat element or the conversation bot on kind of servicing the customer up to a point, and then once it gets kind of to the more complex end, or whether you really need to be able to kind of support them, you can then pass that on to a human or arrange a follow-on appointment. So
that's right.
We can see there's a massive amount of benefit for organizations who can take on and utilize these platforms to really benefit both themselves as an organization, but also benefit their customers. How can businesses get themselves ready for putting these for getting these chatbots or getting these conversational bots in place? What do they need to start thinking about? What do they need to do?
Well, the first thing is information. So the one thing that always surprises me that is that people that don't necessarily, when they engage with us, understand that there's a big information gathering process. And we've been very bad at presenting that. Some people are good. So they have like lots of data sheets that they use. So some of the bigger charities like Age UK and Contact, for instance, they've got big data sheets. So they've got a lot of information out there that they publish regularly. And that's great because that gives a chatbot the ability to go and get that information and ingest it into their service. So we then know about their stuff and we can build it out. But a lot of organizations aren't really doing that. And it's then trying to work out, well, how do we prep that? What information do we need? What's the primary information that we need to build out? Because I know you can't just do all of it at at any point, and your website won't have all the information on. Much as we can completely ingest your whole website into a chat bot or a voice bot, and have your own chat GPT or voice GPT, it won't have all the information on, and nor should it, because you're going to get random questions that come in from the side that you go, well, don't want to dedicate a page to that, but they'll be asked, and there's never enough space. You just go, oh, I can't deal with this. There's 300 pages of information here. How am I ever going to find it? And that's usually where this is the chat or conversation process is. It goes straight to that piece of information. You ask the question, gives you an answer. That easy. And that's why Bing are using the GPT models for their own right, because it's Microsoft, of course. And they're using that as a now supporting co-pilot for search, but the way to prep is get information, gather your information, get your plan of what processes you want to organize as well. So if you've got a process that you think, well, look, this is very process driven, it isn't something that needs a subjective requirement, so it doesn't need a human to understand that, to make a decision about something. It's a process. So if we go to B, and then we go to C, and we go to D, well, if that process is a very logical process, then that can be automated, and that can be automated through the conversation, either with them phoning up and automating it, or chatting via any of the channels that we talked about, WhatsApp and your own website and stuff. So then if you've got a bunch of processes, then they can be as part of your phase one, providing then your systems are able to take that stuff on. So as part of your whole digital transformation journey, do you have API access to your services? So are they open services? Are they open enough to integrate into something else? And that's a consideration, of course, with any digital transformation. You need things to be as open as possible, else you're going to get stuck at some point if you've got some, a closed proprietary system that doesn't work. Might have a lot in it, but if it doesn't talk to anything else, then it's always going to be its own little silo, which isn't a great idea. So if you've got that framework in place, then you're doing quite well, but information gathering is huge, producing documentation, good for training your own people, but also very good for training then a GPT model. And
we always find that as part of our we find that as part of, I mean, we're going to talk about the next podcast around kind of how you build an understanding of your customers, and doing that information gathering and understanding what questions are being asked are a really important part of that experience, especially both from our side, but also from your side when you're designing these experiences, because you can go, actually, these are the main questions that people are asking. Can we automate those? Can we prioritize those? Like, what other questions are being asked? What other information are we missing that we need to fill in those gaps?
Yeah, and a lot of it becomes you can get it a lot anecdotally, but the problem with anecdotally, it's usually inaccurate. So somebody has a feeling that they guess asked this a lot, and then you can get much more definitive stuff. So things like call. So if you've got a call contact center and you know what questions have been asked in the contact center definitively, by using something like, you know, call tracking, call miner is one, as a brand out there that does that stuff, then and proper analysis of emails and things like that, then you've got a really good set of starting points to go, actually 80% are these, you know, 45 subjects. We need to have good detailed information about those 45 subjects, you know, or whatever it may be. And then, you know, you have the documentation to support that. You have the training materials, if you like, and the proper data sheets. And then you're away. You know, you've got some information then. So it works.
Yeah, and again, it's that type of point. You can really prioritize. You can really focus and prioritize your effort when it comes to the conversational bot. You can also lighten the load massively on the team in regards to being like, actually, we can take a big chunk of these questions away, because most of these are just purely informational, but also some of these might be more transactional, but we can still manage that because we have as an organization, we've got a set process in place for how that happens.
That's right.
Because there's a set process and it doesn't need a human to make a decision, you can automate that, whether that's through the voice bot that you're utilizing for the calls, or whether that's through the kind of type-based chat bot that's on the site.
Yeah, and also, you know, this is how. So GPT in its own right, the stuff that people have been playing with, there is no transactional element to that. It's very much a question and answer. So, you know, it'll give you some sort of answer back, but it's not starting kicking a process off in the format that is, you know, publicly available on. But that's what we then start to build that as this is a process rather than this is a general FAQ answer, you know. So strategically, you kind of decide which ones you're going to do as a process and start kicking off, rather than answering lots of questions about, because somebody is going to need proper help with it, or they are going to engage with something, or they are going to donate something, and you know, things like that. So you want them to be in a process and in a funnel to do that type of journey and integrate into your system, and all of a sudden start doing something else, you know. And then you've got the best of both worlds. Then you've got a really intelligent, I hate saying that intelligent because it's only really answering questions, but it's a very all right, it's a very intelligent chatbot. It does have answers because you've given it the information to have answers, you know. Whereas this has been the whole thing about the hype cycle of chatbots, voice bots and stuff like that, is the fact that, you know, there's massive expectations of it, and then there's huge disappointments. But we're now be dragged up this slope of enlightenment with GPT, because everybody realized actually they can be very powerful. And we're now on this this productivity slope. I think we're over the brow of the hill now, and it's real, but it's you've got to take advantage of it, and you've got to prep yourself a little bit for that journey, you know.
Yes, it's not, it may feel like magic when people are using it, but that magic takes time and takes preparation in order to get yourself set up in the best possible way to be able to allow these systems to work. Yeah,
you've got to give it information, you know. But the point is, it might also be information that is publicly available. So there are, so for instance, the things I was talking about for the charities we're discussing, you know, so there's benefits information and things like that. Well, actually, some of that might be from gov sites, so you can still ingest that information if you've got specific information you do want to take from public sources, because you know that that's going to be an accurate public source. No reason not to. We can still do that. Yeah. So it might be that you're actually curating some of your own information and some publicly available information because you trust the source. Remember that's the point of the chat GPT model, is the fact that it was just taking the whole of the internet, and the internet doesn't always have the highest accuracy score, you know.
The internet has an opinion, lots of opinions.
Yeah, and it always ends up right wing for some reason, you know. But hey ho, you know, that's what it is.
As Microsoft learned in the early days. which we won't go into that.
No.
So you've gone through the effort, you've done all the preparation, you've done all the hard work. How do you go about how do you go about setting the funnel up so you get your customers involved and using the channels that you've set up, or how do you go about getting your customers using the chatbots rather than potentially other services? What's the methods that you use?
Yeah, well, of course you've got to promote it and let people know that those things are available to them. One of the big deal is it's a bit like putting a website up and not telling anybody you've got a website. Of course you've got to promote it. Of course you've got to tell people it's there, and it's the same with the chatbot, and especially because we're in an area now where people are only just getting used to the fact that they can actually do things rather than in this dissolution slump that has been. They shouldn't be now. But you've got to tell people that your chatbot can help you with this, and this, and talk about it continually. Please go here to do this, for convenience and speed. Alternatively, you can wait on the phone, or you can do this, that, and the other, or we're only open these many hours. Especially as an organisation that's maybe charitable, it's an easy conversation to have,
Yeah.
But to be honest, most people that we talk about self-service, and this whole podcast is self-service related. People are happy to self-serve if it works, so if you tell them that this is the smoothest and quickest route, people will try it, because we have no patience these days. So you are providing a very frictionless point, because they're having a conversation like they would with a human, and the chatbot pretty much should have all the answers, provided you've given it the information to have the answers for it, and it can answer those questions then, and lead them down the route that you want to lead them down,
Yeah. And that's the thing, ultimately, it is about providing a more seamless experience for your customers.
Mm.
It's about making life easier for them. And I think there's been some really good points that we've been able to cover as we've gone through the podcast. The main thing here is about making sure you get your data set up in a way where you're prepared for this. So understanding what questions people are asking, making sure that you've got the information to make sure you can answer those questions, making sure you get that in a format that's going to work. Understanding the benefits from the customer side, what's the customer going to get out of this, but also where are you at from a business objectives point of view? What does your business need to be able to achieve to make this happen? And look at the processes. What processes have you got in place as a business that are set in stone, that have an easy flow? If A, then C happens. If A, then B happens, or B, then A happens. However you structure it. One of my words mixed up. It's not a great start. Obviously, not a process-driven person as such, but yeah, make sure, so because they're the things ultimately that are easier for you to automate and streamline, because they're the easier bits and pieces. You're not going to completely remove the human from the process. It's about is making sure that you can automate the bits and pieces which are easy for the customer to deal with, that are kind of taking up a majority of of the team's time, so they can then focus their efforts on the bits that really impact the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, the quality's there now. So, people can rely on this technology much better than they used to do. Like I said, GPT's raised its head on this stuff now to realize that actually there can be very powerful things, whether you're doing chat, whether you're doing voice, it doesn't really matter. If you want to phone the bot, phone the bot. If you want to stick it on WhatsApp, stick it on WhatsApp. All those things are easy enough to do. And I think once people start using your chatbot, then they'll keep going back, especially return visitors. And then you start getting better NPS scores, you start getting better bits, because your customer service is a no-wait customer service. They can just get things done. And I think that's the point that we all want to get to, is the fact that we can help the people we serve, whether they're charitable service users or whether they are customers, in a different end commercially. You can make it smooth.
100%. And I think there's a big opportunity. So our next podcast that we're going to be doing is how to build an understanding of your customers. So in order to be able to build that understanding, you could then use those skills and those capabilities to really inform what this next journey is going to be with your conversational bot. So make sure you join us for that. Yeah, really appreciate, really good conversation today, Steve. I think we covered some really kind of useful tips and points this time, which is always good.
Yeah, absolutely. And but squeezed it into our short form podcast rather than we can talk all day about this stuff. I'm sure I've missed loads of bits, and I'll go, oh, I should have said that.
But the main thing here is to start the conversation. So if there is anything in here that you want to ask more, obviously just get in touch with us. Obviously our business details are available. So get in touch with us if you have more questions, or feel free to listen to the plethora of other podcasts that we've got available. But thank you everybody for listening to us today.
Thanks very much. Cheers. Thanks for listening to the Self-Service Generation podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and found it interesting. Look out for more in the series where we take deep dives around specific challenges in this space. Until next time.